So here I am, 35M, sitting at a traffic light, on what seemed like just another day. I've been married to Emily, 32F, for 10 years, and our life has been pretty routine work, home, occasional date nights, and weekends spent with our two kids. This particular morning, I was on my way to work, running late as usual because Emily had kept me up all night with her restless tossing and turning. She's been acting strange for the past few months, but I chalked it up to work stress, or maybe she's just tired from taking care of the kids. For some reason, I decided to take a different route to work. I usually take the main road, but today I felt like avoiding the traffic. I ended up on this side street I hadn't used in years. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the usual chaos of my morning commute. I felt a little relaxed for once, thinking maybe this route was a good choice. Then I got stuck at this one red light that felt like it lasted forever. While waiting, I absent-mindedly glanced around, just passing the time. I noticed a car to my right, a dark blue sedan, with its windows slightly rolled down. The guy in the driver's seat seemed really agitated, looking around nervously. At first, I didn't think much of it, probably someone running late for a meeting or just having a rough morning. But then I noticed movement in the passenger seat. I leaned a bit to get a better look and my heart just about stopped. There was a woman in the passenger seat, her head bobbing up and down. I couldn't see her face clearly, but the silhouette, the hair, it looked an awful lot like Emily's. My Emily. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks when she lifted her head, and I saw her face. It was definitely her. I saw her wipe her mouth and then, to my utter shock, lean in to kiss the guy. He didn't notice me at all. His eyes were fixed on the road, probably praying for the light to change. I was frozen. My body refused to move as my brain tried to process what I had just seen. This couldn't be real. Emily was supposed to be at home, getting ready for her day. I checked the clock on my dash. It was just past 8 a.m. What the hell was she doing here, in some random car, giving some random guy a blowjob? The light turned green, and I had to move. I drove mechanically, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Was this the first time, or had I been oblivious for months? Years? My knuckles turned white as I gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to turn around and confront them right there. But what would that accomplish? I needed to think, to figure out what to do next. I made it to work, though I couldn't tell you how. I sat in the parking lot staring at my phone. I wanted to call her, to scream at her, to demand answers. But I knew I had to keep my cool. I needed to know more before I made any moves. I needed to catch her in the act, to get undeniable proof so she couldn't weasel her way out of this. I spent the day in a daze, barely functioning. My coworkers noticed, but I brushed off their concerns with excuses about not feeling well. I couldn't focus on anything. All I could see was Emily's face in that car, her lips wrapped around another man's cock. The image was seared into my brain, and I felt like I was going to vomit every time it replayed in my mind. When I got home that evening, Emily was there, acting completely normal. She greeted me with a smile, asked about my day, and even suggested we order takeout for dinner. I played along, trying to act like nothing was wrong. I needed more time, more information. I needed to figure out who that guy was and how long this had been going on. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to Emily's routines, her phone, her social media. She was careful, but not careful enough. I found a few texts from an unsaved number that seemed suspiciously friendly. They talked about meeting up, about how much they missed each other. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, piecing together the evidence of my wife's betrayal. One night, I waited until she was asleep and then took her phone. I knew her passcode, she'd given it to me ages ago, thinking I'd never need to use it. I went through her messages, her call logs, her photos. It was all there, the proof I needed. Messages from Jay talking about their plans, about how much he loved her, how he couldn't wait to see her again. There were even a few photos, ones that made me sick to my stomach. Emily, my Emily, naked in some cheap motel room, smiling at the camera like she didn't have a care in the world. I put the phone back and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind was made up. I had to confront her, to end this charade. But I wanted to do it right. I wanted her to have no way out, no way to deny what she had done. I spent the next few days gathering more evidence, printing out the messages and photos, recording my thoughts and feelings. Finally, I was ready. I waited for a night when the kids were staying over at their grandparents' house. I didn't want them to be around for this. I sat Emily down at the kitchen table, my heart pounding in my chest. She looked at me, confused, maybe a little worried. "What's wrong?" she asked, reaching for my hand. I pulled away and placed the stack of papers on the table. "You tell me," I said, my voice trembling with barely controlled rage. She picked up the top paper, her face going pale as she read. I can explain," she stammered, but I cut her off. "Explain? You can explain this?" I threw a photo at her, one of the ones from the motel. "How long, Emily? How long have you been screwing this guy?" Tears filled her eyes and she started to cry, but I wasn't having any of it. "Don't you dare cry," I snapped. "You don't get to cry. You don't get to play the victim here. You did this. You ruined everything." She tried to apologize, to say it was a mistake, that she loved me, but I couldn't listen. I told her to pack her things and get out. I couldn't stand to look at her anymore. She begged me to give her another chance, to go to counseling, to work things out for the kids, but it was too late. I'd seen too much. I'd felt the sting of her betrayal too deeply. She moved out that night, going to stay with her sister. I haven't spoken to her since. The kids know something's wrong, but I haven't figured out how to tell them yet. My world is falling apart, and I don't know how to pick up the pieces. What should I do next? How do I move on from this? How do I explain to my kids why their mom isn't coming home? Any advice would be appreciated. Hey everyone, it's been a couple of weeks since my last post, and I want to thank you all for your support and advice. It's been a tough time, and I've been struggling to keep it together. For those who don't remember or are just tuning in, I caught my wife, Emily, cheating on me with some random guy. I had the unfortunate luck of seeing her in the act while I was on my way to work. Since then, I've been trying to figure out what to do next and how to move on from this betrayal. After Emily moved out, things got even messier. I thought I had seen the worst of it, but I was wrong. It turns out, Emily is not the person I thought she was. She's colder and more calculating than I ever imagined. All she seems to care about is getting her hands on everything we've built together during our marriage. It started with a phone call from her. She wanted to talk, and I reluctantly agreed, thinking maybe we could have a civil conversation about the kids and how to handle the separation. We met at a coffee shop, a neutral place, where I thought things would stay calm. But as soon as she sat down, I could see the change in her demeanor. She wasn't the crying, apologetic woman I had seen when I first confronted her. She was composed, almost businesslike. "Listen," she started, her voice devoid of any emotion. "I've been speaking with a lawyer, and I think it's best if we settle this quickly. We both need to move on with our lives." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Settle what quickly?" I asked, my voice barely concealing my anger. "You mean the divorce?" She nodded. "Yes, the divorce. There's no point in dragging this out. We both know it's over." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was acting like this was some sort of business transaction, like she hadn't just ripped my heart out and stomped on it. "What about the kids?" I asked. "What about everything we've built together?" She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "The kids will be fine. They'll adjust. As for everything we've built, I want my fair share. I'm entitled to half of everything." Half of everything. The words echoed in my mind, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "You're entitled?" I spat. "After what you did? You think you deserve half of everything?" She didn't flinch. "Yes, I do. And if you fight me on this, I'll make sure it gets ugly. You don't want that, do you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, was threatening me. I stood up, my hands shaking with rage. "You're unbelievable," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't even look at you right now." She didn't try to stop me as I walked out of the coffee shop. I got in my car and drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. How had things gotten so bad? How had she become this cold, calculating person who only cared about money? I decided to call my lawyer and tell him everything. He was shocked by her change in attitude, but told me not to worry. We had a strong case, and he was confident we could protect my assets and ensure that the kids were taken care of. But even with his reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my gut. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers and gathering documents. Emily had moved into an apartment and was making it clear that she wanted as much as she could get. She started asking for details about our finances, our investments, and even our savings for the kids' college funds. It was like she had turned into a different person overnight, someone who only cared about material things. One day I received a call from my lawyer. "We need to talk," he said, his voice serious. "Can you come by the office?" I drove to his office, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, he handed me a stack of papers. "Emily's lawyer sent over a list of demands," he said, his face grim. "She's asking for half of the house, half of your retirement fund, and full custody of the kids with you paying child support." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Full custody?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would she want full custody?" "She's claiming you're unfit to be a parent," he said, looking me in the eyes. "She's alleging that you have anger issues and that the kids are afraid of you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's a lie," I shouted. "I've never hurt my kids. They love me." He nodded. "I know, and we'll fight this. But you need to be prepared for a battle. She's not going to make this easy." I left his office feeling more defeated than ever. How had it come to this? How had Emily turned into this monster who would lie about me just to get what she wanted? Over the next few days, I tried to keep a brave face for the kids. They were starting to sense that something was wrong, and I didn't want to worry them. But inside, I was falling apart. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I felt like I was constantly on the verge of breaking down. One evening, as I was tucking the kids into bed, my daughter looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. "Daddy, why isn't Mommy here?" she asked. "Is she mad at us?" I felt a lump form in my throat. "No, sweetheart, she's not mad at you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mommy and Daddy are just having some problems right now, but we both love you very much." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I kissed her on the forehead and went to my room where I finally let the tears fall. I felt so helpless, so lost. How could I protect my kids from this? How could I make sure they knew that I loved them, even if their mother was trying to take them away from me? The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't just sit back and let Emily ruin everything. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every conversation, every time she picked up or dropped off the kids. I even started recording our phone calls, hoping to catch her in a lie. It wasn't long before I started to see the cracks in her story. She was trying to paint me as an unfit father, but I had evidence to the contrary. I had pictures of me with the kids, videos of us playing and laughing together. I had texts from her admitting that she had been unfaithful, that she was sorry for what she had done. I compiled everything and took it to my lawyer. He was impressed with the amount of evidence I had gathered and assured me that we had a strong case. But even with his confidence, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily had something up her sleeve. A few days later, I found out what it was. I received a call from my bank, informing me that someone had tried to access my accounts. I immediately knew it was Emily. She was trying to drain our savings, to take everything she could before the divorce was finalized. I called my lawyer and told him what had happened. He advised me to freeze our joint accounts and move my money to a separate account that she couldn't touch. I followed his advice, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? To our kids? That night, I confronted her. I called her and told her I knew what she was trying to do. She didn't even deny it. "I deserve that money," she said, her voice cold and flat. "I gave up my career for you and the kids. I deserve to be compensated." I was speechless. "Compensated?" I echoed. "You cheated on me, Emily. You betrayed our family. And now you want to be compensated?" She didn't miss a beat. "Yes, I do. And if you don't give me what I want, I'll make sure you never see the kids again." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I knew I had to fight back, to protect myself and my kids from this monster she had become. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. Emily was relentless, and every time I thought I had the upper hand, she would find a new way to attack. She hired a high-powered lawyer and started spreading lies about me, telling anyone who would listen that I was abusive and unfit to be a father. But I fought back. I gathered more evidence, spoke to witnesses, and even had a few of our mutual friends testify on my behalf. It was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't give up. I couldn't let her win. One day, I received a call from my lawyer. "We've got a break," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "We found evidence that Emily has been siphoning money from your accounts for months. We can prove that she's been planning this for a long time." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally get the upper hand. I met with my lawyer and went over the evidence. It was damning bank statements, emails, even text messages where she discussed her plans with a friend. It was clear that she had been plotting to take everything from me for a long time. We presented the evidence in court, and it was a turning point. The judge saw through her lies and manipulation, and things started to turn in my favor. Emily was furious, but there was nothing she could do. Her carefully crafted facade was crumbling, and she was being exposed for the cold, calculating person she really was. But even with the legal victories, the emotional toll was immense. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. I was trying to hold it together for the kids, but it was getting harder every day. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to find some way to cope with everything that was happening. But the battle was far from over. Emily was still fighting tooth and nail to get everything she could. She started making outrageous demands, asking for things that were clearly unreasonable. It was like she was trying to wear me down, to make me give up out of sheer exhaustion. One day, I received a letter from her lawyer. Emily was demanding that I sell the house and give her half of the proceeds, along with a significant portion of my retirement savings. She was also asking for full custody of the kids, claiming that I was too unstable to take care of them. I took the letter to my lawyer, feeling a sense of dread. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice filled with desperation. He looked over the letter, his brow furrowed. "We fight," he said firmly. "We don't give in to her demands. We have the evidence we need to prove that she's been lying and manipulating this entire time. We can win this." His confidence was reassuring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was never going to end. Emily was never going to stop until she had taken everything from me. But I couldn't give up. I had to keep fighting, for my kids and for myself. One day after a particularly grueling court session, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, going over the day's events. He looked at me, a serious expression on his face. "You're doing great," he said. "I know this is hard, but you're doing everything right. We're going to get through this." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. Maybe there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally start to move on. But then, out of nowhere, Emily made a move that blindsided me. She filed for a restraining order, claiming that I had threatened her and that she was afraid for her safety. It was a lie, of course, but it threw a wrench into everything. I was served the papers at work, and I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I called my lawyer, panicking. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice shaking. He was calm, as always. "We fight it," he said. "We have the evidence to prove that she's lying, but it's going to be a tough battle." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following week, and I spent every waking moment preparing. I gathered character witnesses, collected evidence, and prepared myself for what I knew was going to be a brutal fight. The day of the hearing arrived, and I walked into the courtroom feeling a mix of dread and determination. Emily was there, looking as cold and composed as ever. She testified that she was afraid of me, that I had threatened her, and that she needed protection. But when it was my turn, I presented my evidence. I showed the court the messages and emails, where she had admitted to her affair, where she had discussed her plans to take everything from me. I had character witnesses who testified to my good character and my love for my kids. In the end, the judge saw through her lies. The restraining order was denied, and Emily was reprimanded for trying to use the legal system to manipulate the situation. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last update. I want to thank all of you for your support and advice. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here we are. For those of you just tuning in, my wife Emily cheated on me, and it's been a brutal fight since then. She turned out to be colder and more calculating than I ever imagined, caring only about taking everything we built during our marriage. After winning the battle against her restraining order, I felt a small sense of relief. But it didn't last long. Emily wasn't giving up. She wanted everything: our house, my retirement savings, full custody of the kids, and child support. It was clear she was out for blood. One morning, I woke up to find my car keyed and all 4 tires slashed. I knew it was her, but of course there was no proof. I filed a police report, but nothing came of it. It was just another tactic to wear me down, to make me give up. But I couldn't let her win, not after everything she had done. My lawyer and I continued to gather evidence, documenting every interaction, every lie, every threat. Emily, on the other hand, was becoming more brazen. She started spreading rumors about me, telling our friends and family that I was abusive and unstable. It was infuriating. People I had known for years were suddenly questioning my character, all because of her lies. One day I received a call from Child Protective Services. Someone had reported that I was abusing my kids. I knew it was Emily, but I had to go through the process. A social worker came to our home, interviewed the kids, and inspected the house. It was humiliating and heartbreaking, but I cooperated fully. Thankfully, the social worker saw through the lies and closed the case, but the damage was done. Emily had managed to plant seeds of doubt in people's minds. One night, after a particularly grueling day in court, I received a call from Emily. She was crying, saying she missed the kids and wanted to see them. She begged me to let her come over just for a little while. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe she was finally realizing what she was doing to our family. When she arrived, she put on a great show for the kids, playing with them, reading them stories, and tucking them into bed. For a moment, I almost believed her act, but then she turned to me, her face cold and calculating. "I need more money," she said bluntly. "My lawyer's fees are piling up, and I need help covering them." I couldn't believe the audacity. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "After everything you've done, you expect me to give you money?" She didn't flinch. "Yes, I do. And if you don't, I'll make sure you regret it." I felt my blood boil. "Get out," I said through gritted teeth. "Get out of my house." She left, but not before reminding me that the battle was far from over. I knew she was right. She would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss our options. He suggested we go on the offensive, digging deeper into her finances and her activities. It was time to turn the tables. We started gathering evidence of her spending habits, her frequent visits to expensive restaurants, her trips to luxury spas. It was clear she was living well beyond her means, likely funded by the money she had siphoned from our accounts. We also looked into her relationship with her new boyfriend, the guy she had been cheating with. It turned out he had a criminal record, including charges for fraud and assault. We compiled all this information and prepared to present it in court. In the meantime, I focused on my kids, trying to give them a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. We spent more time together, going to the park, watching movies, and just talking. They were my anchor, the reason I kept fighting. One evening, I was going through some old photo albums with the kids when I came across a picture of Emily and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. It felt like a lifetime ago. I couldn't reconcile the woman in the photo with the one who was trying to destroy my life now. The court date arrived, and I walked into the courtroom feeling a mix of dread and determination. Emily was there, looking smug and confident. But as we presented our evidence, I saw her expression change. The judge listened intently as we laid out her financial records, her extravagant spending, and her relationship with a known criminal. Emily's lawyer tried to counter, but it was clear they were on the defensive. The judge was not impressed with her lies and manipulation. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step in the right direction. After the hearing, Emily approached me in the hallway. "You think you've won?" she sneered. "This is far from over. I'll make sure you pay for this." I didn't respond. There was no point. I walked away, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The fight was far from over, but I knew I had the strength to keep going. Over the next few weeks, things started to improve slightly. The judge had ordered a temporary custody arrangement that allowed me more time with the kids. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could see the kids more often, and that gave me the strength to keep fighting. Emily, however, was not backing down. She continued to make outrageous demands, but my lawyer and I were prepared. We countered every move she made, using the evidence we had gathered. It was a constant battle, but I was determined not to let her win. One day, I received a call from my lawyer. "We've got a new development," he said. "Emily's boyfriend was arrested for fraud. This could be the break we need." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was the turning point. We quickly gathered the details and prepared to present them in court. The arrest added weight to our case, showing that Emily was associating with criminals and putting our kids at risk. The next court date arrived, and I walked in feeling more confident than I had in months. We presented the new evidence. and the judge was clearly concerned. Emily's lawyer tried to downplay it, but it was obvious they were scrambling. The judge ordered a full investigation into Emily's finances and associations. It was a major victory, but I knew the battle was far from over. Emily was furious, and I could see the rage in her eyes as she stormed out of the courtroom. In the following days, things started to unravel for Emily. The investigation revealed more about her shady dealings and extravagant spending. It was clear she was living a double life, one that was finally catching up with her. But even with these victories, I couldn't let my guard down. Emily was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. I had to stay vigilant, for my sake and for the kids. One night, as I was putting the kids to bed, my son looked up at me and asked, "Daddy, is everything going to be okay?" I hugged him tightly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yes, buddy," I said softly. "Everything's going to be okay. I promise." But deep down, I knew the fight was far from over. Emily was still out there plotting her next move, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. Over the next few weeks, the investigation into Emily's activities continued. The evidence piled up, showing a clear pattern of deceit and manipulation. Her lawyer tried to spin it, but it was clear they were losing ground. I spent every spare moment documenting everything, preparing for the next round in court. It was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't let up. My kids' future depended on it. Then one afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. "We've got a new hearing date," he said. "This could be it. This could be the one that finally turns things in our favor." I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The thought of another courtroom battle was daunting, but I knew it was necessary. I had to keep fighting, for my kids and for myself. The day of the hearing arrived, and I walked into the courtroom feeling a strange sense of calm. We presented our case, laying out all the evidence we had gathered. The judge listened carefully, clearly taking everything in. Emily's lawyer tried to counter, but it was clear they were struggling. The judge asked pointed questions, and it was obvious they didn't have good answers. As the hearing wrapped up, the judge announced that a decision would be made soon. I walked out of the courtroom feeling a mix of hope and fear. This could be the turning point, but it could also be another setback. In the days that followed, I tried to stay busy, focusing on work and spending time with the kids. But the waiting was agonizing. Every time the phone rang, my heart skipped a beat, wondering if it was the call I had been waiting for. Finally, one evening, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. "We got the decision," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "The judge ruled in our favor." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was a major victory, one that gave me hope for the future. But even with this win, I knew the battle was far from over. Emily was still out there, still plotting, and I had to stay vigilant, for my kids and for myself. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The court's decision meant that I had more time with the kids and more control over our finances. It was a huge relief, but I knew I couldn't let my guard down. Emily was still out there, still scheming. One day, as I was picking up the kids from school, I noticed a car following us. It was a dark sedan, the same one I had seen near our house a few times. My heart raced as I drove home, trying to stay calm for the kids' sake. When we got home, I called my lawyer and told him about the car. He advised me to document everything and call the police if it happened again. It was just another reminder that Emily wasn't giving up. She was watching, waiting for her next opportunity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the car, about Emily, about everything that had happened. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. The next morning, I took the kids to school and headed to work. But my mind was elsewhere, constantly worrying about what Emily might do next. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something big. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from my bank. Someone had tried to access my accounts again. I immediately knew it was Emily, but without proof, there was little I could do. I called my lawyer and informed him, but it was just another frustration in an already overwhelming situation. One day, as I was going through some old documents, I found a letter from Emily. It was dated before all this started, back when things were still good between us. She had written about her hopes and dreams, about how much she loved me and the kids. Reading it now, it felt like a cruel joke. How had things gone so wrong? The next court date arrived, and I walked into the courtroom feeling a mix of dread and determination. Emily was there, looking smug and confident. But as we presented our evidence, I saw her expression change. The judge listened intently as we laid out her financial records, her extravagant spending, and her relationship with a known criminal. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last update. So much has happened, and I want to thank you all for your continued support and advice. For those of you just tuning in, my wife Emily cheated on me and has been trying to take everything we built during our marriage. The battle has been brutal, but there have been some developments that I need to share. A few weeks after the judgment, I received a call that shook me to my core. Emily's sister called to tell me that Emily had been rushed to the hospital. She had taken a lot of pills in what appeared to be an attempt to end her life. I was stunned, my mind racing with a mix of emotions. Despite everything she had done, I still cared about her. She was the mother of my children, and I didn't want her to suffer. I went to the hospital, not knowing what to expect. When I arrived, I found her in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs. She looked fragile and broken, a stark contrast to the strong, calculating woman I had faced in court. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed to be in a deep sleep. The doctors told me that she was stable and would recover physically, but she would need a lot of emotional support and therapy. I sat by her bedside, feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and compassion. How had things come to this? How had the woman I once loved fallen so far? Over the next few days, I found myself visiting her more and more. At first, it was out of a sense of duty and concern for the mother of my children. But as the days went by, our conversations became more personal, more reflective. She apologized for everything she had done, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face. "I've made so many mistakes, and I've hurt you and the kids so much. I don't know if I can ever make it right." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to let go of all the anger and resentment I'd been holding on to. But another part of me was still hurt, still wary of trusting her again. As the weeks went by, our relationship started to change. The hostility and bitterness began to fade, replaced by a tentative warmth. We talked about the kids, about our past, about where things had gone wrong. She started to open up about her own struggles, her own pain. I saw a side of her that I hadn't seen in years, a vulnerable human side. The kids were cautiously optimistic about the change. They saw us talking, saw us spending time together, and they started to hope that maybe things could get better. I didn't want to give them false hope, but I also didn't want to shut the door on the possibility of healing. Emily began therapy, and I could see the changes in her. She was more reflective, more aware of her actions and their impact. She was trying, genuinely trying, to make amends. And slowly I found myself warming to her again. The trust wasn't fully there, but the anger was starting to dissipate. One evening after visiting her at the hospital, I sat in my car reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the court battles, the hospital visits. It had been a whirlwind of emotions, and I felt like I was finally starting to come out the other side. But I knew the journey wasn't over. There was still so much to work through, so much healing that needed to happen. I decided to take things one day at a time, focusing on the kids and their well-being. I wanted to give them a stable, loving environment, something they desperately needed after everything they had been through. And as for Emily, I would support her recovery and be there for her as best as I could. But I knew I had to protect myself and the kids to make sure we didn't get hurt again. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship continued to evolve. Emily was released from the hospital and moved into a small apartment nearby. We started having family dinners once a week, trying to create some sense of normalcy for the kids. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of tension and unresolved issues, but we were trying. One night after dinner, Emily and I sat on the porch watching the kids play in the yard. She turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It was still a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to move forward. Emily has been doing better since she started therapy. We've been trying to co-parent effectively, and our weekly family dinners have become a routine. The kids are happier, and for the first time in a long time, there's a sense of normalcy in our lives. I started to think maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild some kind of friendship. Last weekend, I took the kids to Emily's apartment for our usual dinner. We had a nice time. Emily cooked, the kids laughed, and for a brief moment, it felt like old times. After dinner, I stayed a bit longer to help clean up while the kids played in the living room. Emily and I were chatting, and she seemed happier, more at ease. When the kids were busy with a movie, Emily and I sat on the couch, talking about the future and how we could continue to support the kids. The conversation shifted to more personal topics, and for the first time, we talked openly about our past mistakes and regrets. Emily was candid about her guilt and her desire to make amends. "I really appreciate everything you've done," she said, her eyes sincere. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "We're doing this for the kids," I replied. "They need both of us." She moved closer, her hand brushing mine. "Maybe we could try again," she said softly. "Start over for the kids' sake." I felt a knot in my stomach. This wasn't where I thought the conversation was heading. "Emily, we can't just go back to the way things were," I said, trying to stay calm. "Too much has happened." "I know," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "But I miss you. I miss us." She leaned in, her lips brushing against mine. I pulled back, startled. "Emily, no," I said firmly. "We can't do this." But she didn't stop. She moved closer, trying to kiss me again. In my effort to push her away, she lost her balance and fell backward, hitting her head hard on the floor. I froze in shock as she lay there, crying in pain. "Oh my God, Emily," I exclaimed, rushing to her side. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Why don't you love me anymore?" she sobbed, reaching out for me. I tried to help her up, but she pulled me down and kissed me desperately. I broke away, feeling overwhelmed. "Emily, we can't," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry." I stood up and left the apartment, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to think or feel. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and guilt. I drove home in silence, the image of her lying on the floor, crying, etched into my mind. The next day, I received a call from Emily's parents. They wanted to meet and talk. I agreed, knowing I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. We met at a local cafe, and I could see the worry and sadness in their eyes. "We know things have been difficult," Emily's mother began, her voice gentle. "But we've seen how much she's changed. She's really trying, and she loves you. Please, can't you find it in your heart to forgive her?" I sighed, feeling the weight of their words. "It's not that simple," I said, trying to explain. "So much has happened. I don't know if we can ever go back to how things were." Emily's father leaned forward, his expression serious. "We understand that, but think about the kids. They need both of you. Maybe you can start fresh, build a new relationship." Their words stirred something inside me, but I couldn't ignore the pain and betrayal I still felt. "I appreciate what you're saying," I replied slowly, "but I need time. This isn't something that can be rushed." They nodded, their disappointment evident. "We just want what's best for everyone," Emily's mother said softly. "Please think about it." I promised I would, but as I left the cafe, my mind was a swirl of conflicting emotions. Could I ever truly forgive Emily? Could we ever rebuild a relationship after everything that had happened? As the days passed, I found myself thinking more about their words, about the possibility of forgiveness and healing. Emily and I continued our routine, co-parenting and trying to keep things stable for the kids. But the memory of that night, of her desperate plea and her parents' words, lingered in my mind. One evening, I sat alone in my living room staring at the family photos on the wall. I thought about the kids, about what they needed, and what was best for them. I thought about Emily, about the woman she used to be, and the person she was trying to become. It was all so complicated, and I didn't know if I had the strength to navigate it. The next morning, I received a call from Emily. She sounded hesitant, almost nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked. I agreed, knowing we needed to address what had happened. We met at a park, a neutral place where the kids could play while we talked. Emily looked different, more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. "I'm sorry about the other night," she began, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have pushed you like that. I just VJ Alfie, I miss you so much." I nodded, trying to find the right words. Emily, I care about you and I always will. You're the mother of my children, but we can't just jump back into things. We need to take it slow, figure out what's best for everyone. She looked relieved but still uncertain. I understand. I just want a chance to make things right. We talked for a long time about the past, the present, and the future. It was a difficult conversation filled with tears and honest admissions. By the end, we both agreed to take things one step at a time, focusing on the kids and on healing ourselves. The following weeks were a delicate dance of rebuilding trust and setting boundaries. We spent more time together, but always with the kids around, keeping things light and focused on them. It wasn't easy, but there were moments of genuine connection, glimmers of the warmth we used to share. One evening after a particularly good day with the kids, Emily and I sat on the porch, watching them play. She turned to me, her eyes soft and hopeful. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me another chance." I nodded, feeling a mix of hope and caution. "We'll see where this goes," I replied, "one day at a time." As the days turned into weeks, our relationship continued to evolve. We were cautious, aware of the fragility of our situation, but there was a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. The kids were happier, sensing the change in the air, and that gave me the strength to keep going. But even as things seemed to be getting better, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still challenges ahead. Emily was still in therapy, working through her issues, and I knew there were no guarantees. The past had left deep scars, and healing them would take time and patience. One afternoon, Emily's parents came over for a visit. They wanted to see the kids and check in on us. As we sat in the living room, they looked at me with hopeful eyes. "We've seen how much progress you both have made," Emily's mother said gently. "It's wonderful to see. We just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive her fully." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their expectations. "I'm trying," I said honestly, "but it's not easy. We're taking it one step at a time." They nodded, understanding. "That's all we can ask for," Emily's father said. "Just know that we're here to support you both, whatever happens." It's been 2 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. Despite our best efforts, I still haven't been able to fully forgive Emily. We've had moments where it seemed like things might get better, but the past is hard to let go of. The trust that was shattered never really mended, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. During this time, I met someone new. Her name is Sarah, and she's been a breath of fresh air in my life. We met through mutual friends, and what started as casual conversations quickly turned into something more. Sarah is kind, understanding, and completely different from Emily. She knows about my past and has been incredibly supportive, never pushing me to move faster than I'm comfortable with. Starting a new relationship has been both exciting and challenging. There's a part of me that feels guilty for moving on, especially when things with Emily are still so complicated. But Sarah has shown me that it's okay to seek happiness, and that I deserve to be with someone who respects and cares for me. However, life has thrown me another curveball. Over the past few weeks, I've started having health problems. It began with occasional dizziness and fatigue, which I brushed off as stress. But then I started experiencing chest pains and shortness of breath. I went to the doctor, and after several tests, they diagnosed me with a heart condition that requires immediate attention. The news hit me hard. I've been trying to process everything: my failed marriage, my new relationship, and now my health issues. It feels like I'm constantly fighting an uphill battle, and I'm not sure how much more I can handle. I know some of you have been wondering why I didn't completely break up with Emily. Trust me, I've seen the comments. It's a fair question, and I want to address it. The truth is, I didn't want to completely sever ties because of our kids. They need both of us in their lives, and I thought that maintaining some level of communication and cooperation with Emily would be best for them. I never expected it to be easy, and it hasn't been, but I felt it was the right thing to do for their sake. Emily and I still have a complicated relationship. She knows about my health issues and has offered to help, but I've been hesitant to let her back in. I appreciate her concern, but I need to focus on my own recovery and the new path I'm on with Sarah. It's been difficult to balance everything, and I'm still trying to figure it all out. One night, after a particularly rough day, I sat down and wrote a letter to the kids. I wanted them to know how much I love them and how hard I've tried to do what's best for them. I explained my decisions, my mistakes, and my hopes for the future. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I needed them to understand. Sarah has been a rock through all of this. She's come with me to doctor's appointments, helped me manage my stress, and been a constant source of support. I don't know what I would do without her. She's reminded me that it's okay to take care of myself, that I don't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. As for Emily, she's been making an effort to be more involved with the kids and to show that she's changed. I can see that she's trying, and while I appreciate it, I still can't forget what happened. The wounds are too deep, and I don't think they'll ever fully heal. We'll continue to co-parent and do what's best for the kids. But I know now that we can't go back to the way things were. This journey has taught me a lot about forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of taking care of oneself. I've learned that it's okay to let go of the past and to seek happiness, even when it feels impossible. I've also learned that life is unpredictable, and sometimes you just have to take things one day at a time. To everyone who has followed my story, offered advice, and supported me through these tough times, thank you. Your words have meant more to me than you'll ever know. This will be my final update as I need to focus on my health and my new relationship with Sarah. I'm hopeful for the future, despite the challenges ahead, and I'm grateful for the support I've received along the way. Take care, everyone, and remember, no matter how dark things may seem, there's always a glimmer of hope if you're willing to look for it.